Donald Trump is under fire for his prepared statements. The scrutiny often turns towards Steve Bannon. Trump keeps a very lean staff, and few aides are successful at putting words in his mouth. But insiders say Bannon does have that ability.
You also got this sort of Bannon-Bart influence in there, which I think is a snag on the president. He has to move away from that sort of Bannon-Bart nonsense.
So you mean Bannon and Breitbart, Steve Bannon?
That the whole thing is nonsensical. The president has a very good idea of the people that are undermining his agenda that are serving their own interests.
They include Steve Bannon?
Oh, yeah.
Anthony Scaramucci there saying it would be bad to be out of the mainstream, but that's exactly where Steve Bannon likes to be. He ran Breitbart News as a counterweight to mainstream conservative media like Fox News, boasting it was the platform of the alt-right. And while the site has a broad range of topics, even some of its own former associates say it has become a hub for racists at times. So the question is whether that kind of support was a feature or a bug of Bannon's site, just as the question during Trump's campaign was whether these white supremacists were simply political freeloaders or whether Donald Trump actually welcomed them. Jamal Simmons is a Democratic strategist. Brian Darling, a former aide to Rand Paul. Jamal, your answer?
Well, you know, Ari, I just got to tell you, my family, my grandmother grew up about 30 miles east of Charlottesville in a little town called Kent Store in Louisa County. And I talked to some of my relatives who were there today. We were actually slaves in that county. I can take you to the place where my family worked the soil. And to have the idea of people walking around with torches in the middle of the night. And my family is talking about how people in the area are even standing up, feeling more bold. That boldness comes from places like Breitbart, comes from people like Bannon, and I think it is a feature. We've seen Donald Trump over the course of the last couple of years, and we've seen him really come out, whether it was the immigrant ban or bringing people up on stage who were victims of immigrant crime. Yet it took him 48 hours to mention the victim of a terrorist attack. This is not a bug. This is a feature, and Steve Bannon is part of the problem.
You know, we'll put up some of Breitbart's headlines, Brian, and give you the chance to speak to this. I mean, is this really what President Trump should have in the Oval Office?
Well, I've written 3 op-eds this year for Breitbart. I look at Breitbart as a conservative site with so many stories. I mean, they have about 35 million page views every single month. This is a website that has a variety of opinions, and to call it an alt-right, white supremacist platform, I think is wrong. I mean, you don't see Richard Spencer writing there. You don't see these extremists having platforms there. I think what is happening is people are disparaging Steve Bannon.
What about Milo?
He's not writing there anymore.
But he was when Steve Bannon was there.
Well, I mean, he's not there anymore. I actually think he wrote a piece about the alt-right that I think many people point to try and tie the alt-right to Breitbart. But ultimately, I think that it's a bit outrageous for people to disparage Steve Bannon and to disparage Breitbart and conflate them with people who are bad, the people who Donald Trump by name denounced today.
What about on Bannon himself? I mean, you got Rupert Murdoch and others now in the New York Times calling for his ouster. Do you think Bannon should stay?
I think he should stay. I think guys like McMaster are pushing for nation-building foreign policies that I didn't vote for. I support a more restrained foreign policy, and there's a big fight in the conservative movement and the Republican Party on this very issue.
Ari, I think this is a moment where it's not just about the partisanship. It really isn't partisan. This is about what kind of society do we want to have? What kind of civilization do we want to have? Do we want to have a country where everybody gets to participate, or one where white people are the only ones who get all the best benefits? And I think people like Bannon and Breitbart are advocates for this alt-right movement that says they want hate to be the norm in this country instead of people trying to figure out a way to get along. And I want every Republican, I think, to step up and say the same thing.
Jamal Simmons and Brian Darling, thank you so much. Hardball with Chris Matthews is next, and Chris is back, so stay tuned.